Here we go. You should be hearing me right now. Good morning from Istanbul. It's 2 a.m. in the morning, the night that connects Friday to Saturday. And this is Atilla Eşilara broadcasting for Real Turkey channel. Today we're going to talk about Turkish elections, an issue I've covered in the past, but they're around the corner. On May 14th, Turkey will hold the first round of the presidential elections as well as for the 600 seats that make up the Grand Assembly, our unilateral parliament. I'm going to present Real Turkey channel staff final predictions, which are based on latest averages of polls as well as what I consider to be a majority of expert opinion. And these are the predictions in case you don't have much time and you just want to get the main idea and then click the subscribe button and get on with your lives. Kilicdaroglu is going to win in the second round, whereas the opposition alliances, the Nation and the Green Left, will have a controlling majority in the Grand Assembly. Of course, it's never wise to give a point prediction because, well, life is quantum, shit happens. What kind of shit can happen? There are four factors which may influence the quality of these predictions. One is the groundswell theory, which simply says there are certain trends emergent, but polls can't yet detect them. Obviously, these are either the work of the geniuses or personal opinions, but I have to cover them because it does happen in Turkey. Two, Erdogan's variable health. It's a major issue. One day he's, a young stallion, 20 years old, full of energy and spunk. The next day he's like me, barely able to walk, low testosterone, that kind of thing. If his health deteriorates one more time, well, that's going to have an impact on the outcome. Three, is the currency shock. Turkish currency is on tenterhooks. Central bank doesn't have enough reserves to cover potential demand if there is a run on deposits. And if that happens during the election process, of course, it's going to hurt AKP and Erdogan's chances of being re-elected. And finally, the subject that is most talked about if you're following Turkish elections in any capacity, which is foul play, voter heist. Erdogan's capacity and ability to steal the vote. I don't think any of them is going to materialize, to be perfectly honest with you, but I want to cover all corners here. And the video will conclude with the warning that even though the ballot day is 14th of May, we probably won't know the results by 15th of May. In fact, the election process may last throughout the rest of the May. So, let's get on with it. Presidential elections. I am going to present you the average of April polls by Mesele Economy, an ally for which I also create content and one of the leading economy channels in Turkey. These are in Turkish. The headline says presidential elections first round polls. This is the average of 17 polls conducted in April, according to which Kilicdaroglu in the first round averages 47.3% versus Erdogan's 43.9%. There are two small protest candidates, Muharrem İnce, which gets roughly 6.3% of the vote, and Mr. Sinan Ogan, who gets 2.5%. Now, if you follow Turkish elections closely, you would ask me, there have been 6 more polls in May. Why don't you include them? To be perfectly honest with you, some of those polls are by agencies I've never heard of. No one has heard of them. And the rest are openly and vehemently pro-AKP. They all show Erdogan winning in the first round. I have checked their results against majority expert opinions such as by Ibrahim Uslu, Bekir Ardır, uh, Özer Sencar of Metropole, who's widely quoted in the Western press, they are not concordant. I don't, sorry, hay fever. I don't think this is by design or that's another foul play, but just by coincidence, the only polls from May are really not indicative of the results. So, Kılıçdaroğlu is ahead in the first round, but short of the 50-point plus one vote that's required to clinch the deal in the first round. Can that change? If it changes, it would change in favor of Erdogan, in favor of Kılıçdaroğlu, simply because, according to expert opinion, these two smaller candidates, Mr. İnce and Mr. Ogan, are fading as I broadcast, and their voters are migrating to Kılıçdaroğlu and Erdogan. Moreover, poll details show me that not all, but a majority of the voters of these two smaller candidates are likely to vote for Kılıçdaroğlu. So I won't preclude a Kılıçdaroğlu victory in the first round, but I would only assign it a coin flip probability, 50%. I think there is something working for Mr. Erdogan's advantage, which is the mail-in ballot. Well, actually, it's not a mail-in ballot. It's people who vote from abroad. Turkey has 3.4 million registered voters living abroad versus roughly 62 million in Turkey. In a tight race, which I expect it to be, roughly 1.5, maybe 2 million votes will be cast abroad and physically flown to Turkey and then hand counted. They could give Erdogan the edge to make it to the second round. Let's look at what happens in the second round. This is again by Mesele Economy. The title says presidential race second round polls. As you see, Kılıçdaroğlu wins by a small or smallish looking margin of 51.71% versus Erdogan's 48.29%. Now, you may say, well, the margin is barely in excess of statistical error, so why do you give Erdogan Kılıçdaroğlu an 80% probability of winning rather than call it even odds? Well, simply because Turkish presidential elections are always close, and these more than 3-point margin is highly predictive of not a statistical error, but a Kılıçdaroğlu victory. And I think, to be fair, again, the opinion leaders, the veteran pollsters that I take as reference, do agree with me. They called the race with a small margin for Kılıçdaroğlu in the second round, with the caveat that they assert Erdogan will definitely resort to foul play, which is a subject I will cover in the coming minutes. Now, presidential elections goes to Kılıçdaroğlu, but I'm really sorry, this has been very exhausting and very tiring, and my metabolism is breaking down at all levels. Now, in the system that the opposition wishes to establish, presidential powers are devolved to the Grand Assembly and even to municipalities. So, Turkey's parliament, which is essentially a rubber stamp at this point for Erdogan's policies, simply because his alliance of AKP and MHP have a vast majority, will play a more important role in making legislation and supervising the presidency. So we need to look at election polls as well. This is again from Mesele Economy, and these are poll averages from April. AKP is the leading party with a 36.4 of potential votes, led by CHP 29.3. The third largest party is İYİP, a member of the main opposition Nation Alliance, which scores 10.6. Then YSP, the new Green Left, and its three left-wing allies, to recall, the Green Left used to be called HDP, the Pro-Kurdish Rights Party, but since it's currently in trial at the Turkish Supreme Court, which may lead to its closure, it changed its names, rebranded itself, and running new candidates. So it's the fourth party with 10.4%. MHP and its leader, Mr. Bahçeli, are allies of Mr. Erdogan, and they are fifth with 7.1% of the vote. So, based on this, the Republic Alliance, which is AKP plus MHP and some really tiny parties, seems to have a lead. But in Turkey's non-linear electoral system, that doesn't mean anything. To explain what I'm trying to tell you, imagine American presidential elections where the popular vote and a majority in the electoral college can go to different candidates. And that's how it is in Turkish elections. Because of the way we elect candidates in multi-candidate districts, the manner in which we allocate votes to them, the seat distribution cannot be estimated easily from these poll results or poll averages. And in fact, you need extremely complicated, here we go, where are these things? Just a second. Here we go. You need extremely complicated simulations or algorithms to calculate how many seats each alliance will win. This is a representative seat simulation by Team Research, center-left but rather impartial, which allocates 290 seats to Republic Alliance, 237 to Nation Alliance, and to 73, which is the Green Left Alliance. Now remember, the simple majority in the Grand Assembly is 301 seats, and it looks like Mr. Erdogan's alliance, the Republic Alliance, is the largest bloc, but they don't have a simple majority. Throughout the election process, the Green Left Alliance has largely supported Mr. Kemal Kilicdaroglu, and there is good reason to believe that in many policy areas such as social welfare, human rights, economic policy, broadly speaking, as well as investigating alleged corruption and cronyism by Erdogan administration, they will cooperate with the Nation Alliance. So these two opposition alliances combined do have more than 300 seats, which I call a working majority. Okay? So, just a second, let me find my picture here. So obviously, one seat simulation may not be reflective of the whole truth. There are very few of them, 5 or 6. I've investigated all of them. They are more or less similar in the sense that they call Mr. Erdogan's alliance, the Republican alliance, as the largest bloc, but I have not seen any which suggests that the Republic alliance will have 301 seats. They grant Republic alliance anywhere from 260 to 290 seats. I've shown you the one that's most favorable to Mr. Erdogan. Even there, his alliance falls 11 seats short of a simple majority. If you ask my opinion, it's going to be something like 275 for Republic Alliance, 250 for the Nation, and the rest of the seats going to Green Left. So in essence, once the elections are over and certified as such by Turkey's Supreme Electoral Authority called the High Election Council, Turkey will have a regime change. Kılıçdaroğlu will be the new president, and legislation will be controlled by a broad opposition alliance, which is, at least for next year or two, is stable. So, obviously, these are point predictions. A lot of things can go wrong in Turkey, believe me, almost everything goes wrong. So let's look at 4 major factors, or these are not black swans, but known unknowns, which can change the predictions, which starts with the groundswell, or If you're from the United States, Brazil, or UK, you would call it the shy water syndrome. In other words, voter preferences changing so rapidly, or a large number of voters hiding their preferences from pollsters so that we really don't know what the facts on the ground are. It's possible, not a very likely scenario in my view. I have done a lot of research into poll dynamics and they look frozen. I mean, between now and the first election date on May 14, Erdogan may gain a couple of points. A member of the Nation Alliance, Egypt, may gain a couple of points, but that's basically it. And once you translate these gains into the highly nonlinear parliamentary electoral process, they don't really add up to much. In other words, there is a possibility of shy voters changing my prediction, but I wouldn't assign the probability higher than 20%. To Mr. Erdogan's health, I have shot maybe over 200, 300 videos, and this is a subject I've never brought up because I think it's extremely unethical to build scenarios on a person's life or health. But the fact is, Mr. Erdogan has a lot of chronic sicknesses. He has colon tumors removed. He is believed to have epilepsy and high diabetes, and he periodically falls sick for long periods of time. The latest such episode was in the summer of 2020, when for 3 months he was out of it. I mean, physically and mentally, he simply was not able to perform his duties as president. But hey, in Turkey, who's going to call him on it? And recently, he fell ill with a stomach flu, which made him faint or puke during a live broadcast. We never saw the actual shots, but that's what has been rumored, and then he has been out of the public eye for 3 days, which is fine. It can happen to everyone. After all, the guy's 70. I'm sure Biden has similar problems. But then he came back with vengeance, doing like 3 election rallies a day, as well as discharging his presidential duties with the stamina of a 20-year-old male or female, which to me is inexplicable. I am 62 years old, so 8 years younger than Erdogan, and I'm in fairly good shape. But if I come down with the stomach flu, I mean, I don't recover for a week. And I certainly don't get better than I was before the disease. So I would subscribe to the conspiracy theory that he has been given stimulants or drugs that performance enhancing drugs. Nothing illegitimate, of course, but these usually have very potent impact in terms of mental acuity and physical agility in the short run, but you pay a price in the long run. I don't know when that short or long run is, but it's fairly obvious that if he falls ill one more time, in particular between the first and the second rounds of the presidential elections, well, he will be the only one campaigning against the opposition candidate, Kılıçdaroğlu. He will lose. Or there will be a higher chance for Kılıçdaroğlu to win because nobody votes for a sickly leader who may not be around even if he is elected. The third shock or variable that can change my prediction is a currency shock. I've shot a lot of videos on Turkish currency and currency shocks, which simply means the current exchange rate is not aligned with market forces. There is more demand for dollars and euros than available in the market. The difference is made up by central bank to keep the currency stable, which is obviously favorable to the incumbent administration. But in doing so, it keeps wasting its FX reserves, and these are now like running very low. I mean, there is only like vapors left in the tank. And I imagine, given the extremely excited rhetoric stemming from both sides, that tensions will increase. I cannot rule out social unrest between the first and second rounds of the presidential elections. I'm sure both the presidential and the parliamentary races will be so close that there will be hundreds of challenges, and we probably won't know who is going to be the new boss in Turkey. If you come from a developing country, an emerging market, I'm sure you would agree with me that we like to know who the boss is. Constitution and laws are not as important as the guy or the gal who runs the country and she makes up the rules. So not knowing who the new boss will be is a major sort of uncertainty. And I think in terms of uncertainty, we go to safe harbors. And in Turkey, safe harbors are gold and cash currency, which are kept out of the system. So, on top of the current demand, which is pushing the Turkish lira lower and which is only suppressed by central bank intervention, we get new demand from those who are afraid of a regime change or a prolonged period of uncertainty, and the central bank runs out of FX reserves. Turkey is another currency shock. I don't think that's going to happen next week. Even if it does, it probably won't affect the results of the first round voting. But in my base case scenario, which calls for a runoff in presidential elections, there's like a 10 business day window where a currency shock would severely hurt Erdogan's chances. Turks love their lira strong. I suppose everyone does. Not the Turkish lira, but their domestic currency. Sorry. And it will be blamed on Erdogan if we have another currency shock. And finally, if you read just Google or Chat GPT, Turkish elections, foul play is definitely going to come up. Foul play, vote heist, use of force to change the results of the elections, or outright usurpation of elections by Erdogan. Now, this theory comes in three flavors. A, news manipulation, false news, Cambridge Analytica type of stuff, deep fakes to make your opponent look bad. I think these are realistic. They will be tried, but they won't have any impact simply because urban Turks are extremely social media savvy. They know how this stuff goes. They rely on multiple information sources to form their opinions, and the worst case scenario of a Kilicdaroglu sex tape is not going to convince anyone in the urban areas. In terms of smaller towns in Anatolia and rural areas, well, there Kilicdaroglu is already accused of all sorts of things, short of being a demon. He's accused of being an infidel, accused of cooperating with terror organization PKK, another shady religious organization called the Gülenist or FETÖ, or being in cahoots with Western powers that want to colonize Turkey. And it does resonate with some of the voters, which explains why, despite its dismal economic policies, AKP is still leading the party. So, these methods will be tried. I don't think they'll change the results too much. The second variant is hacking into the voter the database of the High Election Council to physically alter the votes. So, in an election where CHP or the National Alliance is winning, somebody hacks in, change the voter tallies, and voila, the next day, CHP has lost by 10 percentage points. Possible, not probable, not credible or reliable, simply because thanks to modern technology, smartphone technology, the physical tallies posted at the ballot station are immediately photographed and sent to the data centers of the opposition parties, and they can be digitally processed so each party knows the vote tallies in each ballot booth. And if their results are not consistent with what the High Election Council reports, then we have a mess. We have Iran in our hands. Not Iran now, but go back to Wikipedia and look what happened when the mullahs declared Ahmadinejad president, even though he lost big. He got wiped out. But hey, he was the favorite candidate of the mullahs. That's not going to happen in Turkey. The third theory is, outright theft. Mr. Erdogan coming and saying, well, I don't like these election results. The hell with democracy. I've declared myself your president for life. Sue me. To be able to pull something like that, as you might have seen in the Trump case or in the United States on 6th of January or Bolsonaro in Brazil, you need to have institutional support. You need to have the high courts, the army, the police behind you. And in Turkey, this is not the case. I've broadcast a video called Can Erdogan Steal the Elections, where I have explained this case broadly, but the simple thing is none of these institutions are actually part of the Erdogan regime. They obey Erdogan not because of a deep-seated loyalty or they get material benefits from him, but simply because if they don't, they are punished severely. Their families are punished. Essentially, they become persona non grata in their own countries. But the moment they sniff his weakness, the moment they get the actual results from High Election Council that he has lost, nobody has any love for him. And you got to remember that if you help him cheat and he loses or he retires for some reason or other, you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. You're going to be impeached or court-martialed. So really, there is no incentive for anyone to help Erdogan, and he doesn't command the kind of loyalty that the mullahs command in Iran from the Revolutionary Guard or the Egyptian army respects President El-Sisi. So everything will be tried under the sun and new tricks will be invented. I don't think they are going to change the results. I think not by May 15, but on May 29th, at the end of the second round, we will have regime change in Turkey after 20 years. And life will change completely. It's difficult to impart upon you how angry Turks have become. There was an article about that in Washington Post, how polarized we have become. Turkey is essentially a very tight rat cage with hungry rats eating each other. We look for enemies in everyone we see, and that's largely because of Erdogan. Our economy is a mess, largely because of Erdogan. We have lost all of our foreign allies and our respect in the world, largely because of Erdogan. Just his disappearance or retirement would be like spring in Turkey. Even AKP and MHP voters will feel better because they won't be waking up to a new day with a new crisis, with a shaky currency, with higher inflation, and most importantly, they won't wake up to a new day fearing new enemies, fearing terrorists bombing places, or foreign powers invading Turkey. All lies completely made up by Erdogan. And with some luck, the Nation Alliance will be able to steer the economy to the right path, which means we'll have a stable currency, falling inflation, decent growth, and better welfare spending to protect the poor from the ravages of capitalism. Well, thank you for watching Real Turkey channel. This is probably my last video before May 14. Obviously, as soon as the results come in, I will broadcast another video. If you like the content, subscribe, like it, share it with your friends. Of course, more traffic is better for the channel. Thank you very much. This is Atilla Yeşilada saying goodbye from Istanbul.